Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. Be part of a global international community and bring our hearts and our minds and our focus together. Why don't we, just come together for just a couple of minutes and use a centering meditation so we can kind of create the space. So just wherever you are, just sit in a comfortable position, and you want to feel your spine straight, and you want to feel your feet or your legs touching the ground. And I welcome you to close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. And just bring your awareness into your body, into your physical body. So just notice whatever sensations arise, occurring in your body. And you can just notice areas where you might feel tight. Where you hold tension. And you can also notice areas that are looser, where you're relaxed. You could notice the weight of your body. And you can notice the areas, the parts of your body that you feel are touching, being pulled down by gravity. So really feel the bottom of your feet. If they're touching the floor, your shoes. Really feel the bottom of your legs are really planted on your chair, your couch. Bring your awareness to the movements, the natural ebb and flow of your breath. The aliveness, vitality running through your body, your life force. You can notice the feeling of the air on your skin. Is it warm? Is it cool? And we're not changing anything. We're just letting ourselves sink through our awareness into just wherever our body is in this moment. And we can also be aware of what emotions we're feeling as we're sitting here now. If we have any feelings of fear, joy, sadness, anger. What's the palette of emotion? And we're just bringing our gentle awareness. Notice if our emotional landscape moves. There are different feelings, or if it's more concentrated on one. And now we can move and just notice what's happening in our mental landscape, in our thinking. Is our mind moving fast? Are there many thoughts? Or is it more spacious or open? And we can just also take a moment and just bring our awareness to the quality of this group. So awareness of sitting in this particular group, this time of day, or all around the world, the sense of connection, of our intention, of our presence. And now just go back for a moment to your breath. Feel yourself sitting in the chair, your feet touching the ground, where you are, and invite you now to come back into the space. Okay, great. So we have less than 60 minutes to explore this topic of collective, ancestral, individual trauma. So obviously we're going to touch on it and hopefully illuminate a bit about it and its meaning in this particular forum around global crisis. So I'm going to say a few words about my understanding of these concepts, and then I'd like to bring you into a short sort of experiential way of maybe touching this in yourselves. So the first thing I want to just bring us together is like my definition, or not my definition, what I understand is what we mean when we say trauma. Okay. So what trauma is, trauma is not the difficult, catastrophic events that happen in our personal life or in life in general. Trauma is what happens in us in relation to those events. Okay, and that's always very personal. 10 people can be in a given situation and they will have 10 different responses. Okay, so we're looking at that. We're looking what happens to us when we are in a situation. And I think the way I would define what would create trauma is any situation that overwhelms our system, where we are not able to hold it, to stay grounded, to stay centered, to stay in relation in the midst of that occurrence. Okay, and that could be, a young child being, screamed at, or, hurt in some way by a parent. That could be, being in a catastrophic event, a terrorist attack, a environmental earthquake. The range is huge, but the trauma is what that does to us. Okay, we can't contain it. It's too big. Our system gets overloaded, and we're not able to process what's happening. We have to have a defense. Okay, and that defense, and then you're saying the defense comes when we can't process. And the defense could be we totally shut down, we go into shock, we blank out, we stop feeling. The defense could be we are overwhelmed by anxiety. We are completely drowning in it. It could be that, we disassociate. Many, many different ways that the body, and by body, I mean our body, our physical body, emotional body, our minds, will have to protect us from an event that overwhelms us. And what happens when we get overwhelmed, if we don't have an opportunity to process it, okay, to work it through, is it lives in us. It actually becomes part of us. And it becomes part of the way we feel in ourselves and part of the way we relate to the world. Just a quick example of how this might work, and I'll use simple examples. If a child is in school, right, and young child, 6, 7 years old, walks into class and teacher, I don't know, notices they didn't bring their homework or their books and brutally attacks that child in front of the whole class, humiliates them, screams at them, whatever, in a way that's completely overwhelming and devastating for that child. If that child goes home after that event and sees their mother and says, this happened, and is crying, and their mother holds them and comforts them and says, that was so wrong of her, and that was so inappropriate, and you did nothing wrong. And it was really, her misunderstanding, and the child can cry and be comforted and be understood and, feel embraced in that, they will move through that event. Okay, that event will be processed in their system and would not necessarily lead to an impact of fear, mistrust, repression, that if, for example, it couldn't be processed, may leave a lasting imprint that would be the way they may, walk into the classroom the next day and a month later and a year later, and they are carrying that trauma inside of them, and it becomes part of them and part of the way they see the world. So that's what I just want to say when we're talking about trauma. This is what we're looking at. What is the impact in us, how we carry it, how it influences, how we feel inside, how we see. So when we get to the complexity, adding complexity in our understanding, when we're talking about ancestral trauma, collective trauma, right? So these are words going around a lot. What I want to say about that is, the way that I see it is not that we are looking at different streams of trauma. It's not like there are some traumas that are ancestral, some traumas that are collective, some traumas that are personal. All trauma holds ancestral elements, holds personal elements, and holds collective elements. Okay? So really, when we're using these terms, what we're really doing is we are raising our consciousness around trauma. We are raising what we understand trauma is. You know, we hold a bigger, more complex, more holistic understanding of all trauma and how it works in us and how it works in the world. So, you know, and I think this is hugely important when we are facing not just how we heal ourselves, but how we heal the world. Because our traumas are part of the collective trauma that is what's creating, I would say, all the problems in the world in some way, you know. So I think having this understanding is really, really important for the work that is going on where Kosha and Anne are sitting. I want to bring us into like just a little kind of experiment of how we can actually feel this in ourselves, okay, how this works. And then I'm going to open up, you know, for questions or comments. So I want to do this. I'm you know, going to take a little bit of time. What I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to bring into your awareness, and I'll go into this more slowly in a minute, but I want to do a kind of caveat around it. To each of you to bring into awareness something that holds some kind of traumatic reaction in you. But I don't want you to bring in something big. I don't want you to bring in something that's going to overwhelm you, because that's not the point of this, you know, and we don't have the resources to really hold that. So I'm asking that you would bring in something that would allow you to feel the impact, but you can manage. And if you feel this isn't going to be good for you, or, you know, don't do it, or, you know, maybe you can turn the sound off for a minute, because I want to do this in a safe way. But I think it will help us to embody some of the things we're talking about. Okay, so just ask you again to kind of feel yourself in the chair and feel your breath. And again, you can close your eyes. And I want you to bring to mind some event, some occurrence that had a big impact on you. It had some overwhelm. You know, you could think of something recent or something in your earlier years that you would say in that moment you were overwhelmed by it. It could be a conflict you had with somebody, or it could be an occurrence, you know, an accident. And I just want you to try kind of bring it to mind. And I want you to notice as you're bringing this into your mind's eye, what happens in your body when you think about and a bit relive this moment. So just notice what happens in you, where your physical body reacts. Where it gets tight. You might notice if your heart changes, if it speeds up. Where things start to, where you notice intensity in your body, sometimes be in your forehead, hands, wherever you hold it. Notice what emotions are connected. Notice if there's emotion of fear, or even in its extreme panic. Or anger, or in its extreme rage. Or hurt, and it's in its extreme despair. We want to get a sense of what is happening in your emotions. And you can also notice maybe thoughts that you have, what you're thinking, if you're thinking. Okay. Okay, and now I want you to go back to that event, whatever occurred. Take a deep breath, because I'm going to move a little bit out of the personal. That was a very personal reaction. And I want you to try to touch, and this might be a little bit more challenging, but where that event, okay, and its impact on you has roots, is connected to something ancestral, meaning something before your lifetime. Where that reaction might be connected with how you know your parents to react, your parents to be in the face of difficulty, or your siblings, or your larger family. So you're beginning to feel in you, in the personal, where this may also be in the ancestral. Our feelings of high anxiety, overwhelming anxiety, is that something you know from where you came from, and you know were held from the generations before you? And that can be anger, or that can be sadness, or that could be holding it in, that you hold things in, or that you vent them out. So you're looking at the personal, and you're feeling in, is that connected as a pattern to something that I came through, that was before me? And just openly explore this, just see if any insights, any connections come up. Ancestral trauma can be, very personal from your family, but also your culture. If you grew up in a culture that tended to be highly anxious, tended to have anger and rage, tended to pull in with grief, and the variation, and we're looking at just normal movement, how things get passed on from generation to generation. And see what happens when you connect to that, when you expand your sense of what happened to you to something beyond you. Because we all carry this in us. We have to. It's what it means to be a human being. That we come from a generation before us. We were formed by and before and before. Okay. So now I want us to move into another area. So I want us to stay connected to what is happening in us around what we had brought into our awareness, the event that we're relating to. Again, we can think of that event, feel it in our bodies, recognize what happens in us in reaction to it. And now I want you to have a sense of what it means, what happens when we walk in the world, our presence, our transmission, our way of being in life when we are in and holding this traumatic reaction. I want us to think, first of all, how much we are in personal survival, meaning we are focusing around surviving this moment because we are so overwhelmed. How much space do we have to take in our environment in these moments? To be open to the world when we are inside the trauma vortex in this moment. How much can we care about others at this moment? How much can we give of ourselves? What's our energy like? What's our energy like? What are we transmitting when we are feeling this tightness, this traumatic place? What comes through us into the environment? And now if you think about, this is expanding our imagination, we think about, let's say, meeting somebody else who is in a traumatized space, who is in a place of tremendous fear or tremendous anger or tremendous hurt relating to something that overwhelmed them. And we are in that same state in ourselves. Think of what happens in that meeting. Can we see each other? Can we feel each other? What do I feel with this person who is overwhelmed? What does it do to me? And we can begin to get a feeling of tens of people like this, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, let's say in this moment, in a traumatized space. What does the environment feel like? What does the air feel like? What does it feel like walking in that? How grounded can we be? How safe can we be? Okay. All right, so take a moment. Okay, so I want us to come back to ourselves. I want us to take whatever that event we were thinking of and we're putting it to the side. Okay, we are not in it, we are not with it. We are here in this moment with each other. Feel your breath. Feel yourself sitting in the chair wherever you are. The air in your skin. Try to feel yourself in the present moment. And come back together when you're ready.